time to now deep dive into our panel discussion. Well, that's right. It's time to also gather nuggets of interesting perspectives from our women leaders. In fact, I think I should probably not even use that word. I should just say leaders who will be sharing about their journey, their experiences for that matter. And I'm sure all of us will gather some thought-provoking insights from this beautiful discussion, because the topic itself is as riveting as it could get. How women are shaping the future of the construction industry. Now, that being the question, let's also get the answers from all of our panelists. But first up, to conduct the session, I'd also like to invite our expert moderator. We have with us Dr. Ananta Raghuvanshi, who's a Senior Executive Director with Experion Developers. In fact, she is an exceptional leader with an exemplary leadership style, as well as with her beautiful contribution of more than 30 years to the real estate industry. She is also a doctorate in real estate marketing and is also the winner of over 42 awards and accolades, including Top 100 World Marketing Leaders by World Marketing Congress. And she also coaches women entrepreneurs and mentors rural executives. So firstly, a warm welcome indeed to Dr. Raghuvanshi to moderate and spearhead this beautiful panel discussion. And on that note, let me also introduce our fabulous set of panelists for all of you. First up, we have with us Prerna V. Mehta, Head Urban Development with WRI India. And her portfolio consists of projects related to climate, smart cities, livable neighborhoods as well, transit-oriented development, tactical urbanism, and also includes developing toolkits, developing detailed project reports, informing policy and capacity building. So on that note, a warm welcome indeed to Prerna as well. We're also joined by Sheetal Bilkar, who's a founder and director, Urja Building Services Consultants. She's an ACE MEP consultant, and having started her company with a 3-month baby in her arms and has taken it to a leading MEP consulting company with over 400 projects and 80 million square feet of work done worldwide. We also have the presence of Sheetal Rakheja, managing partner, Aeon Design and Development, who's been in the profession since 1998 and has successfully designed and completed IT parks, corporate offices, hospitals, integrated mixed-use developments, hotels, and green residential estates as well. And she's also the chairperson, IGBC Delhi chapter and lead accredited professional. We also have the presence of Sheila Sri Prakash, who's the founder and chief architect, Shilpa Architects, Planners, Designers, an internationally acclaimed architect, urban designer, and sustainability expert who founded the Shilpa Architects, Planners, Designers in 1979. She's also the founding trustee of the Reciprocity Foundation, created to assist and fund research, projects, and conferences to evolve design solutions that would help in creating a responsive ecosystem. Well, joining us, we also have Sumit Niyogi, the HR Director, South Asia and Middle East with the Lubrizol Corporation. In fact, he has close to 2 decades of experience in HR partnership, talent management, as well as sales, and he spent the last 5 years being part of various leadership teams. He practices the values of excellence and integrity and believes that one grows by sharing the knowledge. So it'll be wonderful to see that in a summit that's dedicated to women. We'll also have Sumit Niyogi sharing his values and his perspectives as well. That leaves me also with our final panelist. We have with us Dr. Sunita Purushottam, Head Sustainability, Mahindra Life Spaces Space Developers Limited, who has over 20 years of sustainability strategy and environmental consultancy experience, having worked with regulatory bodies in UK and India in various infrastructure development projects, city planning, and construction projects as well. And with that, looks like we have a prolific set of speakers all set. So on that note, looks like all of our attendees are equally set. I'm not going to delay the session any further. I'm in fact going to give it a beautiful start by handing over the proceedings to Dr. Ananta Raghuvanshi. So with that, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. A very, very happy Women's Day to all of you. And I am so excited to be here. What a fantastic lineup we've got over here. And I think I have not seen so many women on a panel on infrastructure or on real estate before. And for the first time, I must say that even Sumit must be feeling a little strange about it. But this is something that only women of vision could have done. And I'm absolutely blessed and to be here and to moderate this session. So one by one, I think my first question here, Prerna, is to you. please do share your journey with us. And how have you balanced, these two things? There's a hard hat, urban development that you wear, and then there's also music and so many other talents that you have and interests that you have. So please do share your journey with us. It's extremely inspiring.
Thank you, Dr. Raghuvanshi, and good
Yeah.
afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me very clearly. Am I audible to
Very
everyone?
clearly, Prerna.
Thank
Very
you.
clearly. Yes.
Thank you. So I have been part of this industry for almost over 16 years now. And as a child, I always was inclined towards something that is creative. And I was always on a lookout of a profession that was giving me an opportunity that could give me an opportunity to really realize that as a profession, and still be attached to that creative part of myself. So I think that's where this whole journey started, when I started to explore during my school time, that which profession should I be looking at. There were several choices. I was a student of science. I had a mathematics background, so all of that was there. But eventually my inclination went towards architecture, where I saw that how I could take this whole creative mindset, to the next level, and where I can make it as a profession for myself. So I think that's where the journey started. And I spent 5 years with that field, and then post that I still thought that there is something missing. I want to do more. So what about, when I look around, there are buildings, but when I look at them together, there is a city. So then, what more can I do? And that led me to doing my master's, where I specialize in housing. And post that, there is no looking back. I started my career with working with the government sector. And from there, I have now been engaged with the NGO sector, the private sector, the corporate sector. So I've seen all the platforms that this profession actually offers, and I have been fortunate enough to be working with some of the eminent experts of the field. And I think it has been an incredible journey in many ways, because coming from understanding this whole perspective of architecture, and then also scaling it up to form a city. How do you bridge that gap of scales of planning and scales of implementation? I think that has been an incredible learning for me through and through. And I have been fortunate enough to gather all that experience over these 16 years of working in the field. And today I'm working with an institution that actually gives me an opportunity to not only look at the on-ground scenarios and make a difference through an on-ground intervention, but also look at how we can move and inform the whole policy ecosystem, which can then eventually complement how our cities look today.
Right. Wonderful. Wonderful. Welcome to this panel, Prerna. And you are truly giving Prerna and inspiration to a lot of girls and boys watching this show, for sure. Wonderful. So I will now move on to Sheetal Bilkar. Sheetal is the pretty lady with the hard hat. Sheetal, do you have your hard hat today? Because I'm
no.
mine. She wears two hats. She's been a pageant queen in Maharashtra, as well as a whole lot of other things which she will share with us. It's a very interesting journey. And also she is a specialist in MEP. And MEP, for the layman itself, is something that very few understand. It is the skeletal system of any building, of any real estate industry. And also it's what gives joy to the residents ultimately, because it's mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And these are the three, like a toothache, when people move into a new house, these are the things which bother them. So Sheetal, I think we need to hear your journey and how you scaled it up to so many million square feet of work that you have done, and how do you balance your passion, which is fashion and glamour and everything, and this is like sweat and heat and sights. So let's hear it from you.
Thank you, Ananta ma'am, for this lovely introduction. And thank you everyone for having me here. So my name is Sheetal Bhilkar and I am founder and director of UBAC. So we are into field of MEP for last 19 years. So I started this company way back in 2002. And this company was started from home. When I was on maternity leave, I had just delivered baby, 3 months baby, and opportunity came for a consulting job for a blood bank for very prestigious hospitals. So I just took it. I said, fine, let's see how to go about it. And that time it was really rare, to have a female engineer at site. They were architects, interior designers, but rare to see engineers at site. But I think I got a lot of love, support from everyone around me. And with hard work and persistence, we have grown to the level where today UBAC has designed more than 400 plus projects all over India. And we have designed more than 80 million square feet all across the globe, so that scale, we are doing project. Recently, in fact, we have completed a 3.4 million, very big project for MSRDC government, Maharashtra government also. So I think we are growing and growing, and I think there's no looking back. And about my passions, there's a lot of things what I do. I think we all are dreamers, and I'm big dreamer. I'm a Piscean and a true dreamer. And I have a bucket list, and I just go on ticking one. So out of that, one was having a beauty crown on my head. And I think I attempted for Mrs. Maharashtra in 2012, but there I was finalist. I could not achieve the crown. So I appeared for Mrs. India Classic in 2013 again. There I got not one, I got 2 crowns, and I fulfilled my dream.
Fantastic.
So, thank you so much.
It's so inspiring, Sheetal. And I can quite relate to where you are coming from, because, to be successful, to be happy, to be satisfied, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you will never find joy. However, if you try new things, new skills, get a new circle of friends, the life kind of, gets the much required catalyst to move on. It's like, स्कूल डेज होते हैं और फिर समर ब्रेक होती है, उसके बाद फिर आपका मन करता है स्कूल जाएं. But these little hobbies keep providing us the much needed nitro charge that we need. In fact, for 30 years I've been into real estate, and I've handled various CXO positions for the last 15-16 years. But at the age of 49, even I decided to go for a pageant. I said, chalo ye bhi dekh ke aate hain, hota kya hai, isme. So it was very nice, and just like you, God was kind. I walked back with 2 crowns, and what I did realize was that these pageants are actually not so much about beauty, it's a personality pageant. And you make such good friendships there. And it was at 49, walking off with 2 crowns when you've never really focused on beauty and health, and then suddenly you say, no, beauty to chalo koi baat nahi, lekin health pe focus kare. And after that, I became a fitness, got involved with fitness. Till then, I wasn't. So something good always comes out of every new experience. And yes, of course, real estate and infrastructure is our first love, definitely. But beech mein kuch naya karte rehna chahiye. And I hope this year also you do something different, and you share it with us as well. Very good, very, 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 very good, very inspiring, Sheetal. And I
Thank
think,
you so much.
yeah. I think now I'll move to Sheila ji. Sheila Sri Prakash ji, the whole world knows her. And since 1979, when women were so scared to even look at, this part, I mean, it's amazing, construction industry, building material industry. She kind of is the founder of Shilpa Architects, and which is fantastic. I think we should hear more from her about her journey from 1979 to now. So in fact, she's being felicitated with some award today also. And we would like to hear about that, and congratulations for that as well, ma'am. Please do share.
I think I'm really happy to be on this panel with so many lovely women, and it gives me great hope and the confidence to say that women as a band or as co-workers need to be able to unite and work towards common goals. And I think what we can really achieve is phenomenal if we do that. So way back in 79, of course, it was a challenge. It was a complete challenge because there were no women architects. And when I started my job, the projects were also small. But this made me look deeply within myself, introspect. And, while all the glitzy, glamorous jobs were going to my male counterparts, I was there trying to reinvent, brickwork, do cost-effective work, and, something that gave me so much joy. So this is good on retrospect because I think it helped me define my priorities, and I tried to work towards things that are sustainable. And at those days, sustainability was not a word at all. It didn't exist. I think cost effectiveness was there. And then I started working towards energy conservation. My first project was my own office, which I built with 20,000 rupees, if you believe.
Wow.
And at that time, a bag of cement was 11 rupees. Yeah.
Wow.
And my dad said that I could build an office, but I shouldn't cut any trees in the garden. So I built a meandering structure which went around, the trees. And it was magical because, I used to sit there and it helped me dream. My pet dog used to sit with me. The birds, I could hear the birds twittering. And I think it only increased my, the reinforcement in me to say that spaces can really do a lot to people and to humanity. And so if people have to achieve what they need, I think they require the right ambience. We're all happy with nature. We all know that, providentially, we've been gifted with the earth, which is absolutely marvelous, the water flowing, the birds chirping, the animals around, and the breeze on our face, the rain, everything, the mountainside, the seaside. Then when we start carving spaces for ourselves, it is a huge, humongous responsibility, because I think we are trying to emulate that same harmony in our micro spaces. So how do you do that? With the commercial challenges that are there, you start building blocks, you start building, facades, and then there's such a mad rush. You try to imitate what your peers abroad are doing, and then you bring in the wrong materials. There's no materiality, there's no kind of sensitivity to a person and the space that he really requires to perform better in whatever his chosen field is. So I think if given a chance again, I would choose the same profession, because I believe that it's a lovely profession, and it can help you achieve and help people and the planet to work in harmony. So this is so I have come a long way from 79. It's been almost 43 years since I started my company.
Yes.
So I started as an individual person, as a one-man, drafting, engineer, everything together. And now we are a big office, a firm, I'm happy about that. And I'm also happy that my second generation, my daughter has also, come back from the US after working there for 10 years. And, I thought that she will not come back, but then she's back. And, I have so many youngsters with me. And this is a profession that makes you feel young always, because I'm surrounded by some lovely young architect girls with me in my office, and we work fantastically as a team. It's like, it's a big orchestra that we are working with, and then we all kind of tango, and then the result is a medley which is very, very aesthetic, pleasing, and in sync with nature. So that's it as far as I go.
Fantastic, fantastic, Sheila ji. Very, very inspiring journey and amazing takeaways. The first one, of course, embracing nature and designing your buildings around the trees. That is so fantastic. I think once I'm vaccinated, I'm certainly visiting your office to see where the tree is and where you are and how the creative juices start flowing. So I'm super excited about that. And of course, the second one, that if you had to start all over again, this is the profession that you would go for. I think a big round of applause for that. And I think our Hard Hatters Club and our tribe seems to be growing. So that's wonderful. And the third takeaway, I think, which all of us will carry with us from here, is that there's a lot that we can learn from the youngsters also, and they inspire us in so many ways. And keep us going forward and keep our thinking open. So thank you very much, ma'am, for that. I will now come back to our other lovely Sheetal, and Sheetal Rakheja this time, and a fantastic forward-looking name of her organization, and once again into design and planning and so much more. So Sheetal, let's hear it from you. What all are you into? And a little bit about your organization also. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananta, for the introduction and giving me this platform to talk about myself. I'm an architect and into practice for now almost 24 years. I was always very passionate about architecture, sustainable architecture. Nature has played a very important role in all the projects, just like Sheila ji's, so nature, daylighting. I play a lot around with light, natural light, because I feel that architecture is an art form, just like music. It can really influence your emotions. So we as architects carry a very important responsibility, because we change, we actually influence emotions, we influence people who are going to be staying there. So natural light, nature, all this plays a very important role, because nature can transform anything from the most simplest to the, so patients heal better, students read better, study better, efficiencies go up when you are surrounded by nature. So that's what I've practiced in my projects for the last 24 years. All projects we've designed buildings which are IGBC or LEED platinum rated, to zero energy buildings. We designed a house called Shunya, made out of complete waste containers, which was around a courtyard, because courtyard work very well in our Delhi composite climate. And that building was consuming a very low energy, and that was supplied by solar panels. So it was, but it was not just about energy, it was zero water, zero waste, and zero energy. That was the concept, that how we all can live sustainably. That was a research project which we ran for 1 or 2 years, and we saw that it was successful. Then we took it forward to offices, and we took it forward to clubs and other buildings that we are doing the same works we took there. So all the projects that we designed now are not only energy and efficient in terms of resources, but also they connect human beings to nature. So it's the overall well-being which is important when we design spaces. So I'm also the chairperson of Indian Green Building Council Delhi chapter, taking that passion of sustainability forward, and trying to spread that among students, among people as much as possible, so that we all, I feel, can make a lot of difference. So that's what the whole practice has been. So our projects are they of course meet the business requirement, but keeping sustainability in mind. So that's what I've been doing, spreading the green word. And our intent is that India one day it is already leading. So one of the top leaders in green building movement. We want to see it is at the forefront. So that's what I believe and feel. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sheetal, for sharing your journey here. We have another very, very wonderful lady. In fact, she's truly a wonder woman, Dr. Sunita Purushottam. She heads Mahindra Life Spaces. And, for an industry where people say, that real estate mein zyada padhai likhai bina kiye log aa jate hain, I'm like so amazed to see, all these prefixes and suffixes and so much that people are not aware of, that happens behind the scenes. And look at the women like her who come out and shine and make such a wonderful difference in their space. So I think Dr. Sunita, we would like to hear about your journey from you.
So thank you so much, and really privileged to be part of this panel with so many eminent people, and I'm getting to meet so many people here, and really overwhelmed with the kind of stories that I have just heard. I'm neither a civil engineer nor an architect. I probably am here by chance, and but out of passion for sustainability. And sustainability is a profession which is cross-sectoral, and I do have a cross-sectorial experience. But my basic degree has been in physics. Physics was my first love. I'm a postgraduate in physics with electronics specialization. And then I actually embarked on my PhD, and I was looking at my PhD topic at what should it be. And I am deeply I have since my childhood deeply in tune with nature. We had a very big garden, and which was tended by my grandmother, my mother, and so a deep love for nature. No tree should be cut, like Sheila ji mentioned. And I used to actually look at all the science encyclopedias, and the Grand Canyon, which is so barren. I just as a child felt that couldn't we have trees here? So of course at that time you wouldn't know what kind of landscapes are there. But I used to look at the pictures and I used to feel we should fill it all with trees. So over a period of time, I actually then did my PhD from IIT Bombay, and that's a different story for another day, how I got to select my guide, a wonderful woman herself. And my PhD topic was air pollution and dispersion modeling. I did my PhD. I'm a fellow of the Royal Meteorological Society, so I do understand the micrometeorology and the climate that urban environments are creating. And a lot of work has been on air pollution, emission, carbon emissions, and understanding the climate change, the scenarios. And my PhD degree, I had to also do the entire MTech course because I come from a different MSc Physics wouldn't, you would have to understand the environmental engineering technologies, water, waste, all the different aspects, chemistry, environmental chemistry, and so on. So I went on to do that. And that was a shift where I came into environmental sciences and then into air pollution, carbon emissions, and then full-fledged into sustainability, especially in my journey with Infosys, where I learned a lot, especially the corporate, how sustainability can be strategically integrated, and a very good opportunity to work with Aruna Newton and Chris Gopalakrishnan, who is very sustainability oriented. The founders are, and so that has shifted the way I look at sustainability, the strategic integration, and this opportunity in Mahindra, where I'm continuing to integrate sustainability into all aspects of business. So that has been my journey so far.
Fantastic. It's very, very interesting hearing your journey is taking me back to mine as well. And I was just trying to remember what was my PhD topic. And it was adaptability and intelligent growth in fluctuating cyclic markets.
Wow.
So there's a time when, and so it was like a septidal analysis of trends as far as marketing of real estate is concerned. So wonderful, very, very fascinating. And I think it'll be a pleasure to actually have access to the synopsis at some point of time and to, have some takeaways from that as well, because it's a very fantastic thesis that you have done, Dr. Sunita, and wonderful to connect with you here. So last we come to, so many heroines are here, of course, real life heroines. And now we have, I move to our hero, Mr. Sumit Neogi. Sumitji, mechanical engineering, XLRI, a wonderful TED talk behind you, a crusader for all the women and, helping them achieve their dreams. What do you think? Of course, you must share your journey with us as well. I'm sure it'll be even more fascinating. But what I would like to also know from you is, you've seen so many successful women in the building infrastructure industry, real estate industry. What are the type of qualities you think a woman must have in her or must develop in her to actually be sitting on top of the pyramid, the way all these lovely ladies are?
Right. Thank you, Dr. Anta, for the welcome that you provided me. One, I'm not a hero. I'm just a common man who is doing his job, for an earning.
आपने इतनी हिम्मत दिखाई है हम सबके बीच में बैठने की, तो आप हीरो तो हैं.
And I must accept this. On Friday evening when the group was created, it took me a bit of effort to send a message today morning. I was confused. What should I write? What should I shouldn't exactly? And I used to think that I've been part of quite a few panels. Some of them were manels. Everyone was a man. Then part of HR, so you will have women in HR. So the maximum share of women that I ever had in a panel before this was 50%. Right. So, and we used to talk. Everyone was talking. Little did I realize that how difficult it is when you are in a scenario which you have not seen earlier. I have a team. I'm part of the HR team. I'm part of a PMIR batch from XLRI, which was 50% women, and subsequently I've worked with it. But this is a different experience. So first of all, I must thank you to accommodate me out here, and I thank the team also. I never reached out to them, by the way, that where have you put me? But the fact is, I feel honored while I'm talking, while I'm listening to you.
I think you're the Krishna among all the gopis.
I'm sitting in my daughter's room. My wife is outside. I'm good. No, thank you. Thanks for the kind words on that. Now, in terms of journey, I've always believed that I go back to very early days. I think it was late 80s, early days in school, and Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan was a focus. So I come from a very rural, remote village of Madhya Pradesh. And we used to see school teachers going home to home and talking about that. So my sister was very young, and my mother was being spoken to by the teacher, the school teacher, the local school teacher, who was actually telling my mother that you need to educate the girl child. There should be a focus. Though in our home, obviously the focus was that everyone will study. My father, my parents, my grandparents never differentiated between their children basis gender. I asked the teacher, and this was when I was 8 or 9, I believe, that why are you telling exactly for my sister? Why not for me? He said, if you are educated, you are an educated individual, educated man. However, if your sister is educated, the society is educated. So the fundamental impact of the focus on women, that's how it came in. I've seen situations at my home where, my parents, there were 6 brothers, 1 sister. My mother would work with my grandmother till the time, they will be making rotis, chapatis, etc. And they would be the last to eat. I could never understand why they are doing so. Once it was very cold night, cold evening. I sat with my mom to see what is she eating, because everyone was done, and I felt that she was eating very, soft atta. I said, this is not a roti at all, because what is there? And that's where one of the factor which came to my mind, that wherever I would be, there would be land of equals. And this is not done. I always encouraged my sister to study, to get the education, focus on that, forget about the barriers, because there are a lot of gender barriers which have been created over a period of time. I'll be honest with you, I had my life quite easy. No one asked me, why are you roaming around in the night? No one asked me to dress in a particular manner. No one ever asked me, why of what I'm doing. Other than the fact that my father asked, why do you want to do engineering? And my grandmother supported me. My father thought that I will better do a science graduation without dropping a year, and then went on to do either a PSc, UPSC, or PO. My grandmother supported me in one of the biggest decisions in my life, and that's where the shift happened very clearly. Now, when I talk of, I'm a mechanical engineer, and trust me, the Department of Mechanical Engineering of REC Bhopal, which is now NIT, at least till the time we were students, had never seen a woman other than other branches. For the history of 35 years, I think till the time the government brought in a reservation for women in seats, never had a woman in that branch. Obviously, architecture was one of the branch, and pardon me for that. I used to call it archi torture, given the work they had to do for 5 years, of course. Difficult one. It had women. And the first inclusion, actually, if you see, comes from the fact that if you need to create space, how will you create it? So I'm a proponent of reservation on that, because the seats were reserved, you got people into the roles. That's one. Second, in terms of how will you break the gender roles, it's by educating people more and more. So number of, it's very simple. The number of students who are female getting into the system have increased over a period of time. The numbers have started increasing, and they are getting into various fields. And everyone looks up to some or the other role model. I looked at it. I'm sure every one of you who, when you were growing up, had a role model, and the set of people who will be listening to you will be having you as a role model. So if there are role models, people will dream, and people will try to achieve their dream. And that's what the fact is. As an organization, what are we doing? We are creating a mechanism through which we can create a place which is having a fair play. And when I say fair play, it would mean that every individual will get equal opportunity to perform within the system. Right? It is the function of anyone taking a role will not be limited to the gender they belong to, or will not be limited to what kind of function they are bringing in. Many companies do, okay, if they're women, they need to get extra compensation. Let's compensate them. Let's give them some extra leaves. It won't help creating a gender equality. What will help, obviously, is those strategic decision-making positions. Do we have women in that? So that's very clearly what would be there. You asked me about, what kind of qualities that a woman should have to lead. Look, the power of compassion definitely is there. The amount of compassion a leader must have. So that's a bit natural when it comes to women. So that's an added point. The other would be what would be required for a leader, right? Strategic orientation, outside in thinking, look at the team, developing the first in line, develop talent pipeline, and given the fact that you know the business. So that's what I would share in form of.
Excellent, Sumit. Very happy to know that you touched upon compassion, because this is one quality which somewhere in the journey gets forgotten. And it is so important that you remember where you came from and how tough the journey was, and the climb was so tough too. And accordingly, you offer that helping hand, to those who are still climbing up. I think that's wonderful. So I think along with compassion come a few of these things, like maybe in our business, of course. Now a lot of things are mandatory, like if you have laborers working at the site, you need to have a facility for their kids and stuff like that, and women's safety and all those issues also, I think, become a part of that compassion net. So I think that's wonderful. And Sumit, you know, in your TED talk, you mentioned that you went to Mauritius and you had a whole lot of your seniors there, and you had to actually be the leader and kind of lead from the front and fix a big problem which had happened there, and how you kind of handled it. Do you think that women, when they are in a leadership role, and for them a situation like that would be even tougher? Firstly, discuss the situation. I would like you to share that with my audience. And then if you were a woman, how different would it have been for you?
Okay, so let me first talk this situation, which is easier to talk about. I don't know what I would have done, but fine, I'll give it a shot to both. So this was the year 2008, and I was working for a firm called Hewitt Associates. It's a consulting firm. I was in Jordan, Amman, doing a project, and was not a great day. It was 26/11/2008 actually, when the Bombay attack happened. And they have in front of US Embassy, they have a large CNN screen which was beaming the visuals live. And I got a call from my Gurgaon office. They said that, Sumit, drop your plans to come back to India. You have to go to Mauritius. There is a problem in the project. It was actually a time-bound project. We had one project from a government agency. It is a Central Electricity Board of Mauritius, CEB Mauritius. It's for the island nation of 40 by 60 kilometers. That was the only electricity board, and the project was very big in terms of end-to-end HR transformation, process reengineering, restructuring the organization, restructuring the HR processes, and so on. And they had pretty much accepted a team which was given in RFP. So in all these government projects, you have to give a RFP which mentions very clearly who will be the project team. The project manager actually had disappeared. He was from Mauritius. Obviously, he had a problem at home and he had to fly back, and he had resigned as well. So I was, given the charge because they wanted someone who was an engineer and an MBA, preferably a mechanical or electrical engineer. So I actually because I went to Amman for 3 days, and I had to get some dresses which make me look like consultant. So I stayed back in Dubai for a day, picked up a bag, picked up a whole lot of stuff, and then I traveled to Mauritius. I landed in Mauritius, straight away went to the client, and I got to know that okay, we have a review with the board of directors, and the board was headed by the deputy prime minister of the country. I said, we are dead. The project will stall because he'll be very angry with what has happened. Because it was a time-bound 18-week project, the first phase of it. And we had already spent 4 weeks with nothing. So I spoke to the local HR manager. I told him that, look, I have come in. I need to understand what has happened. I have no clue. I've only read the RFP in the flight while I'm landing here. So some of the challenges were, so he said, okay, fine. I understand, Sumit, you have challenges. The evening meeting, I'll mitigate. You just prepare one slide by the evening about your plan to go forward. Go ahead. And that's where I realized the big challenges. So I was from a particular batch from XLRI, and I had people who were senior to me in the system. I was actually, in fact, at that point of time, was the youngest in the team, very clearly. And I started getting that feel, okay, how can we work with him? You are junior, etc. So I could feel the body language. Somehow managed that day. After 2 days, again, the same situation. No one is talking. They are grumpy. No one is responding to what I'm saying. On the third evening, when I reached there, I actually sat across the table and said, look, boss, we need to move on. I need to understand what your plans are. And also, I do understand that you have challenges working with me because in your head, I'm your junior. But I'm the project manager. I have to work like a project manager. So forget about what roles we had in the past. This is the role we have at this time. And if some of you want to travel back, this is the flight ticket, please go back home. One of them actually traveled back, but we did the project really well. It ended with close to 60% profitability. We got a follow-up business on that. An 18-week project became a 14-month project that way. So what happened was plain talks straight away that, look, this is what this means. No sugar coating, fact of the matter. And obviously after a few days, I looked at cost, cutting costs very clearly. We picked up a sea-facing beach bungalow and we had fun of our life in those 14 months. Now the question is, if I would have been a woman, what different, how different would it have been? I think the challenge is all here. It is not, and the brain is similar for both men and women, right? It's all about, am I a woman? Am I supposed to say this? Is the question that most of the women I have seen at least asking. Even my wife faces that challenge in her office, despite the fact she's one of the most aggressive women I've met. No, okay, cut this. In terms of it's all here. I don't think I would have done anything different on that. But obviously the situation I've seen most of the women holding on till the time it reaches a particular level, and then there is a blast. So I would expect or encourage everyone, whenever it is the time, speak. There is no harm in it at the end of it.
Fantastic. I think fantastic. I loved your answer, Sumitji, that it's all in the mind, and it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. To do the right thing, there's just one way, just do it right. And, gender should not come there. Absolutely. And in fact, on Saturday, I was, at an awards function here at Aerocity. And I had the pleasure of interacting with the ASI Seema Dhaka, who has saved 76 kidnapped children during the pandemic, kidnapped children and united them with their families. And when I was having this conversation with her, I was getting goosebumps, and she told me the same thing. She says, "Kya farak padta hai, whether I'm a woman or a man? I mean, the risk is the same for both. So it's just about your goal, that yes, if you want to do it, you will do it, and you will emerge successful and stronger, of course." So that was very interesting, Sumitji. And in fact, when there are so many women here and we all love to talk and we have so many stories, it's great to see you participating wholeheartedly and giving us as many words and sentences as the women. That's lovely. Absolutely. I would once again go back to Sheila ji, because we must get the benefit of her experience for sure. Sheila ji, some of the tech trends that will shape the industry's future going forward, could you share those with us, please?
Yeah, I think let me first start from the drawing board. I think at the drawing board level, there's an integration of the BIM platform is a great, technology that is available to us, where we can, create the model and integrate and, look at the various, like, the MEP, the HVAC, the electrical, the structural, and see whether there are any clashes. These are all things that were unheard of, because we had to learn it the hard way working at site, and especially with our drawing tools like AutoCAD, where you draw lines, visualization becomes very difficult. So I think BIM is a fantastic technology product that will help our industry. And going further to the execution, I think 3D printing has phenomenal potential. It is just that we have not got the right material and the scale of 3D printing. But once that is worked out, I think it is fantastic. And then artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning, like rapid prototyping with where your 3D model can completely create an actual model is something which is phenomenal. And that's machine learning. AI is, I think, a great thing, because I think AI, sometimes I do feel that AI might even take over designers, because I feel that AI can obviously, with those banks of computers, they can analyze, there's data available, they can analyze very fast, and they can come up with solutions which are kind of answers to many issues. So AI is something that can change the world and the way it thinks. But at the same time, I'm a little wary, because you don't have that individualistic human touch to it. So it might. I don't know. I hope I live to see AI and the way it affects design. But I am a little wary about what machines can do and will do. But I think that is another important aspect of technology. And of course, you have what else do you have? The Internet of Things. I think the Internet of Things is something that is amazing. We're able to connect. We're able to connect our devices. Today, technology has become so easy. Communication has become so easy. We are doing this lovely conference, sitting in our own rooms, wherever, all over India. It could similarly be all over the world. So you can interact, you can communicate, and you can connect with devices. And people at the World Economic Forum were when I was at the last meeting, were talking about how do people connect brains? How does intelligence get connected? So this is something that has fascinated me, because I think the way forward is collaboration, and how people should get together and not work in silos, but come out, talk about things, and try and see how they can contribute, whether men, women, children, youngsters, older people, people with expertise, young minds, all together, and try and contribute and see how to evolve a solution which is equitable and inclusive. So I think that is very important. And as far as the climate change and our planet concerns are concerned, we did work at the forum on many issues where climate change can be mitigated or can be tackled through these so-called disruptive technologies. So though they seem disruptive in the beginning, how do we use it to the advantage to see that they contribute and they work positively towards checking climate change? And so we have all these sensors, we have all these meters, so data is available, analysis is possible. So I think life will become much easier, and the projects, the scale will become much larger. So that's a fantastic opportunity, I think, for mankind to see how we can collaborate, work together, and evolve solutions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Those are wonderful insights. I will once again go back to our extremely bubbly and effervescent Sheetal Bhilkar. Sheetal, I was in a panel earlier today, and there was this lady, Marianne, from the western part of the world. And she mentioned that initially when she started her MEP work, she would write the name of her organization, but she would consciously not put her name on the visiting card, because even in that part of the world, men were biased. How is she going to handle our entire MEP work? Have you ever faced that in the Indian scenario? And if you have, please do share with us how you handled it.
Definitely, I have gone through instances where people were doubting whether she will be able to take up MEP. These are all critical services. And when I started, I was quite young. So I was around 28-year-old. And usually consultancy, people go after years of experience, people start consultancy work. And I was a young lady with pretty face. So people were always doubting me whether she will take up, So I want to share.
I like your honesty and your the way your heart comes out when you speak. Yes, please.
These are true experiences. We understand when a person talks to you, how that person doubts you. And I have faced this a lot. I used to wear saris those days, used to wear spectacles just to look older, So
And
people will take
intelligent,
me,
huh?
yeah, and
You're
intelligent,
still wearing your specs, but we would like to see you with your hard hat in the end. Yes.
So yeah, people were doubting, and I was of course very young that time, and but every project taught me, and I'm a quick learner, and I kept on upgrading myself to the level where I have come now. But that time, definitely, I have gone through a journey where people were doubting me. When I was going to sites, for the slab checkings, it was difficult for me, very difficult. In fact, those times, you have to walk on those construction sites, no proper safety arrangements. You go for conduit checking. Even if you trip, there is nobody to give you hand, because they are all, away from you, because you are a female, you know. So those kind of experiences, my God. So, and you know what, I was having fear of heights, and I literally used to get sweating when I used to go for that slab checkings and all. But I have gone through all these experiences, and now I'm smiling and talking to you. But that time it was really very difficult for me, to do everything alone.
Absolutely. When these irritants are happening in your life, and when you're surrounded by insecure people, and intellectual supremacy becomes a, what should I say, mind game. It is not easy when you're going through it. But the best part is that if you can laugh about it later, and at the same time, if you can achieve your goal, that's what winners are all about, right? So wonderful.
So true.
Yeah, I want to once again go back to Dr. Sunita. I'm so fascinated by all the work she has done in research and her journey and everything, Infosys and now Mahindra. Sunita, can you share something about these smart buildings and smart building material and all this that is happening now? And of course, in some of your projects, a few things must have been used. Would you like to share some of that with us?
Sure, absolutely. So before coming to smart buildings, I think what can drive sustainable productivity, it's
Yeah.
standardization of design and construction processes. And that's a huge amount of work and digitalization that goes in this process, right? So that improves accountability, that brings in a change in the way people look at things, because now it is very system oriented, process oriented, not people dependent. Then it brings in a sense of continuity. So therefore will bring in resource efficiency, lower cost of construction, increased focus on safety, data, the disclosures piece. So even before we get to the smart thing, I think the construction sector itself needs to focus on digitalization of basic processes. And that's where a lot of work needs to be done. In our organization, we have a huge focus on digitalization of all processes, which we are now seeing the results that it is bringing in increased accountability, productivity, and you know where to go to, where all drawings are, which is the latest version of the drawing, so that you don't go wrong. Then you can't say, hey, this was not the drawing that I should have built. This, because the version is there, it is out there, checked, approved, reviewed, and so on. So then coming to smart buildings, technology focus is huge against, with the current leadership. Our CEO is a believer of, strong believer of technology. And we are bringing in a lot of innovative things that can go to improve energy efficiency. Then induction-based exercising mechanisms for all the homes that we build, innovative ideas and pilots around water metering, sensor-based technologies, sewage treatment plants. Can you monitor it online? The smart bringing water management, smart water management in place. So all these pilots are in work, and we are looking at how technology can help us create a high performance building or higher performance building. So these are the pieces of work that we are doing. Apart from that, many of you may be aware that we have actually created a center, which is the Mahindra Terry Center of Excellence. It's a research center, but though it is a research center, it is actually a center where you can test your building materials. Whatever type of materials are available that can create better buildings can be tested over there for U values and the thermal transmittance, and so that we can understand what materials to be used. The other thing that we are working on is the thermal comfort, visual comfort, and sky modeling. So this is the other 3 other areas of work, plus water sustainability. So water sustainability, looking at the user part of the story, the conservation part of the story, and looking at what can be done on the behavioral interventions that can bring in water conservation in the use phase of the buildings, primarily residential, and the smart metering, the management, plus the behavioral piece, plus looking at the macro picture of water in regional levels, whether it is Chennai, Delhi, or Pune. Pune report was launched last November. Chennai is due, and we are working on the Gurgaon report on water sustainability. So these are the pieces of scientific work that we are involved with. But from a digital aspect, building technologies are coming up very, very quickly, and we are focused on creating better buildings and bringing in various mechanisms to see how we can manage and improve the performance of buildings using technology.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sunita, for that. So I'll Sheetal Rakheja. I just wanted to understand from you, if you can share with us, according to you, based on your experience, what are the advantages that women workforce bring to our sector? And you've been into design and architecture, and you've seen the entire gamut, and end to end, you've seen projects and kind of finished them. So women workforce, what do they bring? That's question 1. And the second question is that, this whole Dwarka Expressway stretch where Nitin Gadkari ji just said that next year, before Independence Day, that road would be inaugurated. According to you and based on your experience, how do you see that micro market developing? So first is about women, what they bring, and the second is about a real life example now and how that would change that micro market.
So as far as women is concerned, I feel just like a child needs both parents, a woman and a man, to kind of, for the overall development. So it's always, women have more, I feel that, they have more compassion. They bring a different perspective to projects, which I felt because I have a team of both men and women with me, who are architects and interior designers. The way women think is very different than what, a man would think. More compassion, more emotional feeling to a project, I would say. So that becomes very important. And I feel that, they would get more into the detailing part of it. And in project, we have projects where we were very tight and small spaces. They somehow have this ingenious way of getting more out of less, I felt, So they can, we as women can carve out everything out of a small space also. So that I felt was very important in a project, from smaller to the larger project. I felt that women were more compassionate towards nature. So when we design, like I said, that for us, nature was very important. We ensure that in our projects, whether they are we've done smallest to the largest scale project, millions of square feet, where we've gotten nature, we've ensured there's natural daylight, overall well-being. So I felt that women had more push towards that, and how you'll get nature, how will you ensure that, it's protected, it's well taken care of. So that compassionate thing that women can get, I think it just changes the whole perspective and the angle, and they'll have some very ingenious ideas. I also felt that, women in my team, I feel that, we are struggling with some very practical ideas, and they'll come up with an idea which is totally different. So that factor I felt was there with the women, because they know in their houses, they have to make the most of the smallest thing, even when the funds are less, they'll still make the best out of that. So that perspective is always there with women. I've somehow found them to be more, so while men are more efficient, fast, women will get involved and do it to the T, the detailing to the T. They'll be involved in the project till the end of the project, till it's not handed over. It's like a baby, they're nurturing. So it's that's what I felt. Women, it's just so beautiful.
I completely agree with you, and I would second you on that.
Yeah.
I think somehow they are born perfectionists. They either don't get into something, but if they do get into it,
yes,
then
it has to be the depths of it. It
has to be
there's nothing at the top level. It is, you have to go to the depth of it, and the best is making the most from the least. That's what I felt, and I feel, now with things changing. Earlier, there were too many limitations which women felt.
Please stay immediately to continue.
Sorry, I think there's some disturbance. So earlier, now women, there are more women who've joined us, and they have the freedom to work, and it's nice to see them there. You fill up the office with so much liveliness, and it's just a total different ball game having all these women there. And I'm fortunate I have a great team who shares my passion and compassion for green buildings, for architecture. So we all work towards that. Wastage nahi hona chahiye, even when you're doing a glazing, a facade for large offices or anything, they ensure that wastages are bare minimum. I feel that men do look at it, but not as much. So here you will bring down the wastages to even, the room sizes, they would do it that tile itna size ka milta hai, so room size modular hona chahiye, you will reduce it. So we've done projects where our wastages are down to bare minimum. So those things I feel only a woman, I'm sure men do that.
That sensitivity and personal touch, I think we all must clap for ourselves on that.
Yes, true. Yes, true.
Yes. So what do you think about the Dwarka Expressway stretch? Now with infrastructure being at, a feverish speed, so to say.
Yeah, I feel that, all the cities and all the smart cities, as we call it, developing along all these expressways and all, they do have a lot of potential in terms of IT enabled and all of that. But somewhere I feel that it's, that human touch is somewhere missing. So, cities, I feel they are not a product of just one day. They grow over time. To understand how our Indian cities, the context, the way they have evolved, what are the requirements, that's very important than just digitalization and just, doing a master plan and doing with it, So I feel that somewhere that thing is, needs to be addressed a little bit more, where more involvement of, ecological architects and more involvement of historians and people who've actually seen the cities grow and what is really required. That should be there. I think things are becoming too infrastructure and too mechanized or IT, and it's that human touch. The real, cities are to be enjoyed, to be lived, and if you have to live green and sustainable way, you have to give the space which kind of enhances that. The context is somehow got missed somewhere. They are just replication of things. So I feel somewhere that, like we said, integration, and right now we are so all connected. So to have that brainstorming, to actually evolve out of that, there's somewhere it's missing, I feel.
Yeah,
that needs to be enhanced.
I think it's a very valid point that cities are designed for people, and there should be spaces where people can really enjoy those cities. So I think, just like Hyde Park in London or Central Park in New York, these are congregating spaces, and there are painters there, singers there, musicians there. Everybody is not as lucky as Sheila ji that, office may be paid hai or office bhi hai or coffee bhi hai, and but yeah, it makes such a huge difference, because ultimately we are a part of nature, and we must provide for nature in those spaces. That's a very, thank you so much for that idea, Sheetal. It's an awesome thought. Prerna, I haven't forgotten you. I started with you, our inspiration. How do you think the power of 500,000 can shape the future of design and construction industry?
All right. So, Dr. Raghuvanshi, I think I'm the last speaker for the panel, and I'm going to kind of step back a little and talk about some of the hard facts that we have when it comes to the construction industry. So construction industry is the second largest contributor to economic activity in India, and it contributes to about 5% of country's GDP. Now, 50% of population in India, women are definitely in a unique position to contribute to this GDP, or rather add to it. There is a recent study by IMF that pointed out that measures to close the gender gap could lead to 6 to 8% gain in the GDP as compared to the business as usual scenario. And in the construction industry, women are essentially engaged at 3 levels. The first of it is the technical positions as policymakers, engineers, architects, or entrepreneurs from innovation ecosystem, etc. The second level is the administrative positions, that is HR, finance. And the third level is the construction laborers. And I think the most vulnerable of them. The construction sector actually employs about 35 million people, out of which only 30% is women. Now, when we closely examine this percentage, it becomes evident that there is a paucity of women in technical and managerial roles, particularly in roles like civil engineers, architects, structural engineers, etc. The representation accounts for only 1.4% currently. This whole percentages of technical and managerial role is accounting for 1.4% women workforce. And additionally, in India, out of this, only 1 to 2% women only reach to the top level management. So today we are in a panel which is actually about 2% of women. Now, some of the challenges that we need to address for women to really contribute more robustly in the sector is to actually look at the gender discrimination aspect of it, to look at pay inequalities, to see or to channelize more opportunities for leadership roles, to look at how we can support the whole system by contributing in the areas of childcare and elderly care, because these are some of the most common reasons why women drop out of the workforce of construction sector. And in my opinion, these challenges can easily be overcome if we create a culture and promote equity and avoid gender discrimination. We drive career development through diverse work assignments, nurture the culture of empathy, and provide support in areas of childcare and geriatric services, and invest in continued training for evolving better work cultures through the lens of gender equity. This will definitely give a boost to women participation. And I think why I'm insisting on the whole participation part is because when I was trying to find some facts around the participation of women in the construction sector and the kind of skill that they bring on table, I was quite taken aback by looking at 2% scenario for us. And I think there is a 40 years of research on this topic actually points to that women are better leaders because they're skillful in setting basic expectations. They encourage positive team environment. They provide employees with opportunities to develop with a career, and they are skillful in relationships that has trust, mutual respect, mindfulness, open communication, and acceptance for diversity. as a concluding point, I would say globally, the Sustainable Development Goals discusses that gender equity is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. On the other hand, the UN Habitat's new urban agenda emphasizes on equal participation of women in shaping growth of cities. However, for India, besides complementing the global agenda of gender equity, 50% women participation is essential to achieve Atmanirbhar Bharat. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, I completely resonate that thought that 50% of our population has to contribute in order for us to actually achieve what we are dreaming of, as a generation. I think we are overshooting our time, but one quick last question from Sumit. The number of women in construction has been on the rise. What attributes to this change, according to you?
Two or three things, I believe. One, obviously, is the number of people who are getting educated in the sector. The number is growing up. And when we talk of the sector has multiple parts, right? Architecture, interior designing, and then the construction work comes in. And even within construction, if we take construction workers, again, the split is pretty much same. Male-female ratio is the same. It's a set of people who are actually doing the advisory work in construction, real estate, etc. That has gone up, no doubt about it. It's a combination of two things to me. One, about the education, and second, the success of people. In the last decade or so, I've seen a lot many construction firms, especially the ones which are now growing in size. They are setting up processes which are enabling their employees, from a gender equality perspective. So that is also going to play a significant role, very clearly. And as we get into this segment, one thing that the government has done really well is investment in infrastructure. And I did hear about Atmanirbhar Bharat. So fact is about, if 50% of our workforce is not participating in an area where the government is investing, which is infrastructure, it won't be successful. So we will continue to see the impetus as we keep moving forward from that.
Thank you so much, Sumit. I am so tempted to do a rapid fire round with all of you. Other than your work, one thing that is there, your dream or your wish list, which you are yet to achieve. So, Sheetal first.
Okay, I want to make a film on a social cause. So that is yet to achieve.
Great. Prerna, what about you?
I want to be continuously associated with the education sector. I have been associated with it off and on, but I think a continued engagement would be a...
Awesome. Quickly, I think we need to wrap up. They're calling me again and again. So Sheetal, Rakheja?
I have two dreams. One is to make a school for the underprivileged, which is zero water, zero energy, and zero waste. And it's a school which will be just made out of just complete waste thing. And of course, with the brains of the children also, because I feel young minds have great brains. Second thing I want to see is India the world leader in this sustainable movement, and complete.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Sunita, and then Sheila ji, and then Sumit.
So, Dr. Ananta, it's I need to finish my Arangetram. That's one. And the other one, probably set up a waste management company.
Great. Please do send me an invite. I would love to come for it. So I think Sheila ji and then Sumit, right?
So what I would do next? Is that the question?
But not related to your work, not related to your job, nothing.
Yeah. See, I want to create a system where businesses start looking at the triple bottom line of planet, people, and profit together, rather than just profit. So I feel that when I was maybe a a teenager when the business management curriculum developed, and we had managers business who looking at things like operations management and finance and marketing, etc., etc. But then I think there needs to be people who can orchestrate sustainability within an organization, and my dream is to train this brood of people who can look at it in totality to get holistic sustainability, because I don't think people can I'm sorry to say, but I don't think just managers trained are able to look at it like this, because they work in silos. In any organization, you have HR, you have marketing, you have production, you have whatever, raw materials. You might have a sustainability group, but the sustainability group I find is is there, but has no teeth, if I may say so. I don't know, but I think to get this, I think we need like the crusaders for sustainability. You have to get these professionals into our workforce, so that they are able to orchestrate this holistic sustainability and make conduct it like a music conductor, to see that everybody tangles around.
Great, great. So I think we've covered everybody. Sumit, you have very few seconds left.
Sure, absolutely. That's always been the case, while writing an exam. So let me give a quick one. I wish to, be someone who can give in the message to the generation or generations to come, that it's okay to fail. Don't put yourself to the sword if you have not scored 90%. I never crossed 80 in my life. You have the capability and you can grow. If I can, you can as well. I always believed in the warrior Arjuna, who had the focus, that I always felt that I'm following that. Today I was called Krishna. So I want to be the Krishna for the Arjuna, on that. So that's what I can say.
Awesome. Thank you so much, all of you. It's been wonderful interacting with you. Let's keep embracing uncertainty and let's remain exuberantly alive. A very happy Women's Day to all of you lovely girls. And thank you so much, Sumit.
Pleasure.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will keep in touch. We will keep in touch and collaborate.
Surely, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm just going to quickly request all our panelists to not leave as yet, because though we have a paucity of time, Sapna is online right now to ask you a couple of questions. So
Lovely, lovely. So we better wear the hard hats.
So we have lots of
Please,
questions,
those
but
who have their hats may wear them.
I think I
Sheila,
should
do you
take
have
my
yours?
leave.
You told me to carry mine.
Okay,
Sorry,
Sheilaji,
I have not
I
carried.
believe you need to leave, Sheilaji. So we'll
Yeah.
say thank you so
Thanks.
much for joining
Bye
us.
bye bye bye.
Sapna, even I have to leave. As I told you, I have an event
Sure,
to
sure,
attend.
please go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you.
so much. Thank you for sharing your views.
Thank you so much.
So I have one quick question. Probably Sumit, being an HR director here, are women less likely to promote themselves and put themselves forward for promotions? One quick answer on that.
1 minute. It's let me quickly tell you this,
Yes, please,
because
please.
before I leave, because
Yeah.
I think we always fight shy to project ourselves. At least that speaks of me, because that's why I jumped in to answer this. And another important thing that I find is that we women do not encourage women. Intrinsically, we feel very diffident to encourage women. So I think we should, because get over that very quickly. And yes, as you said, we do not
Get
promote
over that
ourselves.
shyness and also
But-
promote other women.
No, but then I think you don't need to be very pushy also,
Okay.
if you do your things right.
What difference do you find, Sumit?
This
when,
is for you, Sapna.
Thank you so much.
Encouraging you for putting us
Okay.
all together.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we had a lovely panel. Sumit, what do you think? Are men more, towards aggressive towards promoting themselves, and women are not so much?
So let me use a statement which my manager of yesteryears used to speak. If you don't blow your trumpet, someone would use it as a spittoon. So fact of the matter is, until and unless you talk about yourself, the work which is being done by you, it would be very difficult for someone to get noticed, whether you are a man or a woman. If you ask my experiences, I've seen women don't express themselves and they are content with what is going on. Right? For example, the noise a man will make, if not they are not promoted versus a woman, definitely there is a difference. If I say no, everyone is equal, I would be wrong.
Okay. So that is correct. Women need to start putting themselves forward. That's one challenge probably women face. Now, one single line answer from everyone: how can men contribute more to women empowerment? Prerna, starting from you, one line answer: how can men contribute towards women empowerment?
I think they should start encouraging more. We look around us and we see most of these conferences, discussions, etc., heavily inclined towards manels, as we call them. So I think there has to be a conscious effort towards bringing women on board.
Okay, and conscious effort from men's side, what Prerna says. Sheetal, Rakheja, your view on that. How can men help women empower?
Just consider them as equals.
Okay, so there is no men or women, everyone is equal, just consider the capabilities.
Yeah, I think they should just start considering us as equals. That
okay.
Would be more than enough.
Okay, we are definitely.
Otherwise, we'll find our own passions.
Sunita, your view.
They should get out of the way.
Okay, let's not be that rude.
I'm being very aggressive, but I think equals and not to create any roadblocks. I would say, putting it nicely.
Okay, all right. So men should help women, consider them equal, and not create roadblocks. Anantaji, what do you have to say? One line.
Don't overanalyze a person. Don't overanalyze a person, because we don't overanalyze men, why they are wearing what they are wearing, why they are eating what they are wearing, whom they are meeting outside of office. So don't overanalyze and don't waste too much of unproductive time and all that.
Okay, so let's not judge women,
because there are so few women. Yeah. It is very interesting, that's to know, okay, is she a vegetarian? Okay, what are her interests? What does she wear? So opinionated. Don't be opinionated. Just
women don't
it's a new generation coming in.
Your last
forward and accept them. Yeah.
Right. So very simple. They are the client. Let them take the decision. Don't take decision for them.
Okay, fantastic. Don't take decision on behalf of them. So some very great views that we have got from our panel. Kavya, what do you have to say? We had some awesome views from all our panelists. Over to you.
Absolutely, Sapna. Thank you for that. But thank you indeed to all of our panelists, because we managed to understand not just some hard-hitting facts, which is very important for us to sort of understand that, yes, this is the reality. No sugarcoating out there in the fact that this is how the industry functions, but getting the reality of it from women and from Mr. Sumit as well. I think it's brought about a whole new way of thinking how the industry functions. And I think we've had a beautiful start with the panel discussion. I can't help but thank you all for joining us on this Power Pack Day and for sharing your Power Pack thoughts. Thank you once again to all of our panelists. And thank you, Sapna.